Heather. Stu and Mary, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect.
Oh, Mary.
Hi, Mary.
Mary.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Pretty good.
Good.
So these have already been presented to the board.
Yeah. We're just kind of gonna go over, it's all on the website, so. From my understanding, there's not usually a December meeting, but this one will be able to, right, get all the. Well, there's usually everyone. Yeah. This we can get it, yeah. Get our feet kind of running.
Start off in January and already.
And too many meetings never catch them, we run, so feel free to. Offer guidance if you see me running off the rail.
I can't hear anything.
Stu, how come you can't hear anything? Mary can hear us, right, Mary?
Yeah, and I can hear Stu.
Can't hear anything, Stu, because we're not talking yet.
Well, he should hear us now.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's okay, you're fine.
So with Stu, do we have a forum?
We Stu and Mary, we do. We have 5 out of 7.
We have a forum?
And I don't think we have any is voting.
Here's Rob.
No, we don't have any, just. Rob. There need to see any. Five people said meeting dates.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you, Stu.
All right, I can hear you now too.
Great.
Okay.
We'll call the meeting of the Finance Committee to order at 6:31 PM. And we have the land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement. Would you like me to read that, or would you comfortable referring to it on the website? So I do have an agenda, and we will, we are going to follow Robert's Rules of Orders for small groups, so we will not need a second on our motions. We will also not need to take a roll call. Just note who's here. Anyone have any additions or changes they would like for the agenda?
Nope.
Do we have a motion to adopt?
I'll move to adopt.
Karen, you've got to speak directly or you won't be recorded.
I will move to adopt the agenda.
And you have to speak louder. Sorry.
So many rules.
Okay, the agenda is adopted. Okay, so I want to go ahead and introduce committee members. I think we can all, if you just want to say 1 or 2 sentences about yourself, and we can just kind of introduce ourselves to the membership. We'll start with those who are on Zoom. So Stu, would you like to go ahead and say a couple of sentences about yourself?
I'm sure. I'm Stu Mitchell. One of the, I guess I'm the second board director on the committee. And, oh, by the way, Lori, I apologize for calling you the secretary earlier today in email.
That's okay. Just don't call me late for dinner.
All right. So I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been running businesses and organizations, doing financial planning, business plans, project planning for, somewhere around, I think 35 years, something like that. I lose track. But I'm excited to be involved in the finance committee and see how we can get get things moving along in the good track and trajectory that the community's been on for the past couple of years.
Thank you, Stu. And we have Mary Quinn joining us also via Zoom.
Hi, I'm Mary Quinn. We've been homeowners in Sudden Valley since 2014. I am a graduate of BCIT School of Business. I was a director of sales at the Four Seasons Hotel in Vancouver for 10 years. And after that, my husband and I, Trevor, ran our own businesses for the last 20 years. So we pretty much did everything in running a business, including all the accounting and payroll and everything else. And I'm happy to be on the finance committee and hopefully I can be of some help.
Great, happy to have you, Mary. And Rob, y'all probably know Rob.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rob Gibbs. I retired from the Boeing Company as a quality manager in 2016. Had the opportunity to work to a number of budgets that were created. Also spent some time doing some gathering data for return on investment, things like that with equipment that we needed. Been here in Sun Valley since 2017. Absolutely love it. I am the current nominations and elections committee chair, and I'm excited to be part of this committee because I want to learn something new.
Great. And Mitch?
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Mitch Waterman. I'm a former 34-year employee with the University of California, one of our nation's nuclear weapons laboratories. I was a senior asset manager involved retired after 34 years, then went into the HOA business. I was a GM here in Sudden Valley for 4.5 years. And I'm a contractor, consultant, and I work at different HOAs throughout the site. I'm also a former finance committee member.
Thank you, Mitch. And Karen?
Hey, I'm Karen Borchert. I have a degree in finance. I worked as a financial analyst for several years, reviewing budgets, financial statements, etc. Then I stopped to raise my kids, but in my spare time, I still look at Sudden Valley financial statements. I've been on the finance committee before, and I'm excited to be back.
And I am Lori Robinson. I'm the very newly elected board member for a 3-year term, and I am the treasurer for the board of directors. So does anyone have any announcements? Okay, I just have a couple of announcements for those who might be watching, just to let you know what we're going to be doing tonight. Tonight is more of like an organizational and strategic planning meeting. We will be giving all volunteers on the finance committee the discrimination and harassment policy and procedures for volunteers, including members of the board of directors. That was dated August 9th, 2018. All members will receive and acknowledge that they received it. So that was not in the agenda, but it is the form that we will all be completing. And just one other thing I want to go over is we have been without a finance committee for just a little bit, and we are now coming together, and I hope this is going to be a great year for us. And I did steal something from another committee, and I wanted to go over how our behavior and how we're going to conduct this meeting. I want to read the mission statement for Sudden Valley. Our mission is to foster a livable and inclusive community through exceptional service, transparency, and responsible stewardship of our shared resources. And the vision for Sudden Valley, Our vision of Sudden Valley is a sustainable and collaborative community where natural beauty, recreation, and civic engagement create a strong sense of belonging for our diverse membership. This mission statement and vision statement are going to be supported by the Finance Committee, and everything we do here is going to be for the benefit of the association. Again, stealing from another committee, we are here to support the association's mission. We're going to offer and be open to alternative solutions when addressing a problem or issue. We're going to always show respect to each other, both during meetings and when commenting publicly outside of meetings. We're going to promote civility during our meetings and tolerate nothing less. We're always going to maintain a professionalism, whether it's on social media or in person. We just need to remember we are always a member of the Finance Committee. Even when we're out in public, everything we say, you are on the Finance Committee, and we want to make sure that we uphold ourselves in our comments and everything we say. Okay. So moving on, we don't have any property owners comments, so
No, I think he gave up.
So I did hand out, and it was also in the agenda, a proposed meeting schedule. And it's primarily going to be the third Wednesday of every month that is in between the two board meetings. There are a couple of exceptions. One for Valentine's Day, and plus I am not going to be in the same time zone. And then also in April, I have that moved up 1 week to the 3rd. Is there anyone who has a huge conflict with the proposed meeting dates? Yes, Mitch.
I don't have a conflict, but what I would like to suggest is that we keep an open mind on schedule, because as we get into the budgeting season, 1 meeting a month will probably not be adequate.
Yes, we'll probably have to have some special meetings in order to do that.
So I think it's just wise to advise people. And also, when capital requests, should they come up, which they always do because life occurs, we need to be flexible and support the general manager by saying, listen, we need to have a special meeting. It could be a quick Zoom meeting, but equipment doesn't break down on our meeting schedule.
Doesn't.
It doesn't. It
Abs-
doesn't. And
absolutely.
So to support the general manager and this association, I would like the board or the committee to just be flexible and being ready to hold a quick meeting on short notice to be able to review requests.
Yes, and those meetings could also be held on Zoom if we need to do that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm sure if Joanne has any capital requests that need to be heard immediately by the Finance Committee before going to the board, she will not hesitate to let us know. And we need to get together and look at those.
Can I make a follow-up comment on that?
Yes.
I liked what you said earlier, that everything about the mission and vision statement, that should be the fundamental building block of what we approve. And I also think that we need to support the general manager's ability to maintain and operate our association. It's really critical that we not be looked at as a roadblock or as a unnecessary bureaucratic step, but here to support their success.
We're 100% here to support the success of the community, and that includes our general manager and the board and all of our members.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mitch. Okay, so the financial statements that were presented at the board meeting, and they are on the website under the last board meeting. I don't know that we need to go over them, but I do want to just touch on financial statements and other documents that we may be working on. I will provide to you any documents that we need in order to complete our tasks, but just note that any documents that are considered confidential in nature will not be released with this committee. We will not be taking up those issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can I just interject
You may.
briefly? We have a a lot of experienced residents on this committee, so this might be redundant, but there are a ton of materials posted to the website of a financial nature. If you go to the committees section and click on the finance committee page and then scroll down, you'll see the financial archive. You can find the tax returns, financial statements going back multiple years. Audits are posted. Well, the audits are actually posted bizarrely to the board page, but there's a ton of information that's posted to the website. When we reports, you can always find those on the website. They're 33 pages long because they include breakouts by department. So if there's ever a piece of information that you're looking for or you need to direct a community member to, I would suggest starting at the website. Often people ask us to provide copies of things that are always available online. So just, and if you need help traversing our very confusing website, just let me know, stop by, and I will show you how to get there.
Yes.
Also, Lori, if I may, just a friendly reminder to the committee, you got to really get down into these microphones for people to be able to hear that might be listening online. If you don't hear yourself up in the PA in here, you're really in close enough.
Thank you. I think we're all guilty of shying away from the microphones.
Just
No, I
remember-
am.
just remember, it's you're eating an ice cream cone, basically.
Yes. Okay, Joanne, do we have any capital requests?
No,
Okay,
Sorry, can I ask a question about documents really quick? The full budget packet. I know it's on there. Will it remain on there, or before it is archived or taken away, can we get copies of that? It's something I refer to frequently. And I think as a committee, we would, so just have it saved.
it's always there. So but it's not always easy to get to.
Right,
There is a town hall meeting page, and that's where the budget documents are posted.
yeah,
So if you go to the current one for 2023, and we'll soon put up the 2024 version, but it's named exactly the same as the 2023 version. So go to the current version,
okay,
type in the year that you want to see the budget packet for, and it'll bring up the town hall page of your.
okay. So if it suddenly disappears and I need help, I can reach out to admitters and be like, tell me what to search for exactly.
I'll put finance committee binders together and I
Okay.
will include that. I just
Okay. Yeah, no,
don't have it yet.
good.
We'll have it by the next meeting
we're good.
or before.
Sorry, you probably want to include the Excel version, which is not posted. But if you include the Excel version, we can lock it down, but you can also expand it more easily than in the PDF. The PDF gets grainy when you start making it 200%, so you can actually see the 4-point text.
Maybe we'll make the binder available both in hard copy and electronic form.
Oh, yeah.
So,
that'd be great.
yeah, so we can expand financials as we add to it.
Would this be a good time for me to ask a question? One
Sure.
financial? There is one financial item I'd like to get detail on. I don't need it today. I've been curious about this. It's under expenses for contracted and professional services. And it appears to be $220,000 plus for, I think, PNW. I initiated that contract before I left in 1918. And I'd like to understand, I'd like to see the detail on what we spent $220,000 on, because they're a planning organization, and ED&I, which is engineering, design, and inspection, is generally at 10% of a project. And if this number is correct, then we would have done, 200 or $2.2 million in construction. And somehow I don't think we did that. So if you could, and Joanne, I'm going to
What are
give
you-
this to you.
Yeah,
It's circled right there.
I think that's actually going to be one of the points for our, for 7 or 7B.
I'd like to understand if that's what I'd heard different numbers. And so I'd like to understand, what are we using contractors for?
Yeah, this is a summary number, and so it's many more organizations than just BMW. So you want to know what's in there.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
See, I think this is really good because then we get to start shedding light and saying, okay, what's involved in this, and any misperceptions we correct.
Exactly. And that brings us to our committee concerns and prioritizing what we're going to, what we want to meet about. So I asked for everyone to submit some of their concerns, their top 3, and we had a lot of duplicate. We also have some from the board of directors that their concerns. So I just wanted to just kind of open discussion on what we feel as a committee. And then we'll also be getting requests from, maybe from Joanne or from the board that's going to interject in here, just as a committee, because we don't have any old business that we are continuing on. All of our business is going to be new business. So priority items is looking at golf revenue expenses and marina revenue expenses. We did have an advisory vote on the ballot, and we do have the results of that. And we really want to look at see exactly what is happening with the marina, to see how we're going to deal with a special assessment of marina owners, or actually wouldn't be a special assessment, it would just be an increase in fees. So we really kind of want to look at that, and we want to really drill down much further than that was presented at the AGM. So those are the 2 things that are really hot topics right now with the executive committee. So I'm going to leave those as 1 and 2 from the board of directors. And then the common things that were coming up that I was seeing from several was to evaluate our existing contracts, whether it be with P&E, with tree service removal, and examine for their scope, and do we actually have the most competitive bid out there? And is there anything that we might want to consider doing in-house, not doing in-house, but just kind of looking at that. Of course, we don't make that decision as a committee, but we can definitely give our recommendations. And of course, the executive committee would talk with Joanne, get her input as well, and move on from that. And then budget for Barn 8 and the recreation corridor, budget for the maintenance building, and this is more budget for repairs and replacement. Take a look at our reserve, and these are not in order of preference. They're just, take a look at our reserve study. Are we properly, do we have properly funded reserves and everything that goes along with it? And also looking at parks, trails, and pool costs and maintenance, the budgeting process as a whole. Are we getting input from all department managers? Are numbers that we're using, are we capturing everything that's needed when we do form the budget? And then how do we go about getting bids on projects and contract approvals, and on our do we need to put out an RFP for an auditor for next year, or do we stay with the same? So we're going to take a look at all of those. Does anyone have any, is there anything a hot button or someone thinks is more pressing than another? Yes, Rob.
Well, not necessarily hot pressing. One of the things that I would like to suggest is perhaps creating a template, or creating more of an executive summary of our financials. A lot of times when we start to look at them, we really deep dive into some of these lines. And I'm not saying none of the reports should be dumbed down or anything, for lack of a better term, but I'm just kind of used to looking at an executive summary on things. And if there is a question in some of those important items, then we could deep dive down into that item. Because I think that some of the feedback I get from the community is like at our board meeting when we're talking the financial report, we start to lose people because of there's a lot of detail there. And I know some people feel like that's kind of where they live.
Can I make a comment along those lines, Lori? I just want to
summarize a little more thing. Go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kudos to Joanne for doing a very nice summary of the financials under adverse conditions, that being her very sick at the last board meeting. Um, and I, I think she did a very good job of summarizing the financials instead of doing a deep dive in, something on that level. I think is kind of what Rob is asking for, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rob. Something along that level. And my only recommendation beyond what Joanne did is, charts are always better for a public forum than spreadsheets.
Yes,
Yeah, Stu, thank you. I don't, probably couldn't see me, but I was nodding my head while you were talking. I thought Joanne did a great job of kind of bringing it up to a whole higher tier. So thank you, Joanne, for that. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Another item that I'm hoping we can look at is we talked about the advisory boat with the marina, and taking that into consideration, but I think it would be good for us to get a really good understanding of the expense side of things. There have been some conversations amongst the community members and the marina tenants about what does it really cost the association to run the marina. So I think that would be good, and I think we need to look at some out of the box thinking about. It sounds like there's an engineering, well, not sounds, there's an engineering company who's determined that the dock structure is near the end of its useful life. But I think the alternatives that were on the advisory boat were good. I think there could be others. I think we need to think out of the box and come up with some suggestions on other solutions.
Do you mean as far as what the
Well, you guys
project
have-
looks like or how we fund it?
How we fund it, I think you
Oh,
guys have
I like
heard
that idea.
some of us come up with some ideas around paid parking down there, for example. And I'm broken record about this. You guys have heard me bring it up, but maybe there's folks in the community or people on the committee that have some ideas on how to do that.
exactly.
I think what Karen pointed out is both to look at. One is, what are the other options? Because what was presented was a very narrow view of either A or B. And I think there's A, B, C, D, E, and F that you could look at.
That's
And
right.
So I think we need to look at all of those as you look at, okay, well, that's fine, but then how would you pay for it is the other question. I think a much deeper, expanded view, opening it up to multiple viewpoints.
That's it. And maybe it's just bringing A through F all together.
So from my perspective on that particular thing, before we jump into possible solutions, I would like to better understand the income and expense side a little bit more detailed than what we have so far, especially if we're going to focus on what slips specifically, because we don't really have that data.
You're focusing on the marina.
Yeah, the marina as a whole, which is fine. That's fine to look at too, but kind of to better define the problem and then come up with a solution.
Yeah.
One thing that is not urgent yet, but I would like to look at is, so I see right here on the financial statements, we have a year-to-date through September net income of $590,964, drops down to $567 after UDR. But when the books close at the end of the year, and that will most likely be a lower number because I believe that the last quarter of the year is a projected net loss. So we expect it to be less, especially after the December accrual for payroll. But I would love to see the finance committee discuss and make a recommendation to the board about what to do with those presumed excess operating funds, as we used to do in years past. Yeah.
Yes.
Either under or over, the finance committee would make a recommendation to the board. So one year it was the finance committee and then the board requested that those extra funds pay down principal on the capital loan, things like that.
Yeah, $300,000 that was available. Let's pay it down.
That's a great
That was the
idea.
Idea at the time.
That was the idea. I mean, and by the end of everything and all the adjustments and whatnot, it wasn't quite 300, but
That's right.
yes,
Oh, it
yeah.
certainly got eaten up, but
yeah,
I think it's a good thing for this body to look at as you're getting into the closing of the books. How much is available at the end of the year? What
Yeah.
should we do with it? And, you know, hey, I like eliminating credit card debt.
yeah. And I don't know that that was done last year either. So maybe something to look at.
And we are working, I have conversations with Joel and he's on board of working to get our closing sooner, perhaps by the 20th of each month.
Fantastic.
Not going to happen next month. It's going to be, you know, we can't ask that of Joel.
Mhm.
But maybe over the next 9 to 10 months, we can get it down there, make sure he is, you know, the proper.
Yeah, it would be really nice not to be working on financials 2 months
It is
ago, like when we
Yeah.
just see September and we're in the middle of December. It would be
Yeah,
great
it's
if we
simply
could
infeasible
bring that forward.
to bring that forward, Mary. The fact is that we don't get September invoices until October. And so having that, the financials 2 months delayed is just, that's the way it works. Now we are behind because of Joel having been out ill for almost 2 weeks and because of the audit finalization bumping the preparation of the October statements. So we are behind. It is not an automated process. These financial statements are put together with many manual steps. As much of the process that can be automated has been automated, but there are still combinations that are done manually. So while we can definitely bring up the date within the 2-month window, like it doesn't have to be the 31st of December where we're getting the October statements. So yes, we can absolutely bring it up as Joel has said, but there's still going to be that 2-month delay because of the need to wait for September invoices to arrive in October.
I'd like to ask one other item. When you were going through the list earlier, did you mention a list of all the open pending potential construction contracts that we're looking at?
I didn't mention that particularly, but that would be kind of grouped with number 1, evaluate existing and pending.
Okay, thank you.
I'll add that.
I've heard about
Add
the
that
scope for
verbiage.
this building, and I would really like to know that those contracts aren't going forward until we've had a chance to look at the scope, budget, and schedule and the execution strategy.
Yes, I don't believe there's been any firm date that I know of or anything to begin.
Yeah, Barn 8, the final decisions have not been made, so it has not been put out to bid.
Okay,
But there is a developed plan and a developed design, and we have the permits. So holding that up would be potentially problematic because there's a limited time that those permits are available.
yeah, permits are good for a couple of years.
Yeah, I'm just saying,
Okay.
like that's something of concern to be considered. Regarding the maintenance building, that was approved by the board. That project is underway. So I don't know what,
Okay.
We've
I
issued
ju-
a contract.
I just took what people had mentioned and put it down here.
Okay, so I, as a member of finance, would like to get a copy of the Barn 8 plan and estimate.
fair enough.
Okay.
There's plenty of that material.
And for those who may be new to the community, Barn 8 is where we are sitting right now, to the also referred to as the dance barn. That is what that's what is considered Barn 8 for those who may not.
Or the community center or rec
Yeah,
center.
community center, the rec center, this whole area, the is considered Barn 8 for those that might not know. And we will try definitely as we start talking about things for those who might be new to the community or new to listening to meetings, that when we refer to something like Barn 8 or area something, that we do specify what it is, at least in the beginning, so that people can follow along and know what we're talking about. So we have full transparency to the community.
Can I
Yeah,
talk-
Lori, can I
Yes.
interject here?
Certainly.
I was just going to request that if a committee member, requests documents for something to review, and that gets sent to all committee members, so we all have an idea of what he's talking about and his concerns and or her concerns.
It will
Um,
go out to all.
The way that that works is we have a policy from 2017, I think, or 2018 about it. But all committee chairs have the right to request documents directly from the general manager. And when any board director requests any document, it's not sent to just one director, it's sent to the entire board. And then that committee chair has the ability to share non-confidential documents with the committee. So that's how the information would be requested and then fulfilled.
Thank you, Joanne. I appreciate that.
There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, which is on the list, but I wanted it on the list, and which is the reserves studies and just the whole everything that encompasses. It's such a huge part of our budget and spending and planning, and I mean a lot of what we do. And so they're on the website. They're on the website from at least the last 3 or 4 years. And they are not super fun to look at because it's just pages and pages of spreadsheets and numbers. But I do think it's really important for the committee to get familiar with them and the information that they have, and not just the numbers, but they kind of talk about the limitations, what the assumptions are that go into it. I think to really have a robust capital planning program where we are having input into it, where we have a finance committee making recommendations, I do think it's important that we really understand our reserves position. I think our staff probably does, and knows all the ins and outs and details of it, but I think it's important for the committee to also kind of take that homework on themselves and understand it. Years ago, we had people that were on the committee that were so unbelievably familiar with it. It was just a lot. And I think a lot of that has kind of been lost. Anyway, so I would love to see the committees, the finance committee and the board kind of get back to where there's more institutional knowledge about the reserves in general.
I think that we've all talked about it offline, but the issue is that our corporate documentation and corporate files seem to have evaporated. And so we've lost a tremendous amount of corporate knowledge on the association over the last 3 years. Would you agree with that, Joanne?
It depends on the category to which you refer. Our financial documentation is very well documented and secured. From an administrative standpoint, I do agree with your statement. We have lost a lot of institutional knowledge because of the multiple iterations of staff that were experienced during COVID, so that many standard operating procedures were lost and much information about the conduct of business at that front of the house was lost. I can also, without any hesitation, share my sentiment that our network drives are very unorganized, and it is almost impossible to find anything on them. So part of my desire to move our network file servers to the cloud is that it would force us to clean house and organize that information to make it much more useful to folks. There's a number of other challenges with record keeping in general, but from a financial standpoint, there is no lack of the required documentation.
I think we're good. And I think we're going to have to limit ourselves to concentrating on the financial data. Otherwise, we will go down a rabbit hole. And I think Joanne has a really good feel of the office and the documentation and what needs to be done and the progress she's making. So I also have, I will share with you all, I have, and again, anything that I have that's open for request, anyone, any resident, I will be happy to provide to you. I cannot request and distribute documents to the finance committee that are considered classified or sensitive in nature until such time, if any, they have been declassified and are available to the residents. I want to make sure that all our residents and members know out there that we are not having any access to information that they cannot also have access to. But with that said, I have the GL from 2022 and through September 23, and we'll update it when we have October, that I will be sending out to you all in Excel format, so that makes it easier for us to sort and look at things, so we're not trying to find information in a PDF. We have to do that when it's requested to the members. I believe it is sent out a PDF version. All the information's the same. We're just going to have the ability to sort, so that when we want to focus on an area, we'll be able to focus on it a little bit easier. So any other comments, or other than golf and marina? My personal opinion is the reserve study is something that we're going to be looking at for a long time. In fact, Karen, if once we get it shared. And would you like to speak on it for
I mean, it's on the
sometime next
website
week?
right now, the
Uh-huh.
2024.
or?
Yeah, is on the website. So yeah, I mean, I would be happy to. I don't think I'm an expert on it, but I've spent a good deal of time looking through it and understanding it. And we had a different reserves anyway, so it's just a little bit
Yeah.
different. Joel, I'm sure when he's back, can talk a lot about what goes into it and where the information comes from, which is also important to know. But yeah, and I think Mitch also has quite a bit of experience with so he can keep me if we talk. But yeah, I'd
Yeah,
be happy
okay,
to just
great.
kind of talk through it.
I don't think any of us need to be experts. We just need to be willing to find and understand the information, share it, and be open about it. And
It's a core knowledge book for making financial decisions in our recapitalization and it also helps us with make-buy decisions and replacements, and maintenance costs. It's a key essential document.
Yeah, and it's required by state law, so I think it's another one that it's just extra important that we as the committee understand.
so I think during, unless anyone has any objections, this is, I'm the chair of this committee, but this is not my committee. This is all of our committees, and we represent for the community. So the important items that are time sensitive at this point is the items from the board of directors are always going to take some precedent over what we do. The reserve study is going to be ongoing. But the thing I would like to add for Q1 is that we also begin, it's not going to be a 3-month process, but begin looking at our existing and pending contracts. Does anyone have anything that they think is more pressing than outside of golf and marina? And an ongoing with the reserve study is to start evaluating existing and pending contracts.
I'd say that's
I agree 100%.
Okay.
Can I ask one question though? Can you kind of explain a little bit more what around the parks, trails, pool expenses, what that was about?
That was just, I took everybody who had submitted things and I just put them down in random. I picked someone's, I put them down. And when the second one person had about the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing, I just added it. So this was just for, something to look at. And
Can I ask what you guys mean by pending and existing contracts and you're evaluating them? Like what sort of contracts? We've got dozens of contracts.
yeah, just beginning to look at some of our biggest ones of the contracts that we have. This has been brought up in the executive committee and with board, and that we might need to just look at some of the contracts we have and make sure that they're the best for our community in cost and scope. And
Again, in principle, that sounds perfectly fine. I'm just trying to understand specifically what contracts you're thinking about. All of our construction contracts use the standard language, and
I
they're
don't think we're talking about the language. I think we're looking at more of scope.
So
I think that the key one that came up with most is looking at PNW.
Okay,
Well, and I would say also, I mean, we talked about this a little with NNE. So for instance, we've used Unilect for 3 years. Is it time to put out to bid? It's not this year for sure. It's not. But you
it was
know,
supposed to go out to bid this year, and that's the province of nominations and elections, is my understanding.
yeah, I think we just have some time since anyway, I guess I shouldn't jump to things, but there's a lot of time sensitive things, but kind of looking ahead. So maybe for instance, audit, we've used Larson Gross for a long, and I'm not saying one way or another we should, but to talk about it as a committee, is it time for this to go out to bid again, or should we leave it, or just looking at it? This isn't the first time that a finance committee or board has kind of wanted to just get a feel for all of the larger, I would,
Yeah,
if it were me, I would say over 10,000 for sure.
So,
maybe
so you're talking about service vendors? People who provide us a service like security or PNW or Larson Gross?
I'd say security and also construction. So, do you keep a list of all your recurring, contracts? You know,
Sure, yeah.
all right, so how about we start with this? Why don't you update the current list of the service contracts, when they're due, what their start is, and relevant information, and then add on that, what pending construction contracts you have, and then let's look at those. I'll give you an example. I asked about a a landscape contract about a year ago, and I was told, oh, the contract went to PNW. And I said, well, why didn't you bid out the contract? And they said, well, PNW was bid out, and so we awarded PNW the landscape contract. I think that's how the conversation went. Well, we never wrote into the PNW contractor initially for them to have lower tiered subs to then come in on a non-compete basis. So why are we awarding them sub-tiered contracts that could be going out for bid?
Sure, I'm not familiar with what you're referring to, so I can look into that, Mitch, but I don't know what you're talking about, because PNW, as we've already noted, provides oversight on the construction projects. I'm not familiar with any contract in which they directly provided services, although they do that for other people. I mean, they do
Mhm.
civil engineering work for others.
Okay.
So yeah, so I can look into that.
It was a question an exchange I had with AJ, asking about a landscape contract. Do you have a separate landscape contractor?
No, what landscaping?
Landscape design?
Everything is project based. So like if we've used landscapers to do bank restoration as an example, as a result of flood damage alongst Austin Creek. I don't know if that's what you're referring to. That's why I'm a little confused, because we haven't purchased any landscaping.
Well, let's see the list of contracts that you have.
Yeah, we can go ahead and request those. And then
I'll take
once
that
we
back
see
and
them,
ask the chair.
once we see them, we're really kind of just going with ideas until we have the documentation in front of us. And just to be honest, I'm just started signing the checks, and I've had different members of the executive committee who have signed with me, and we've really just been looking at them. And some of them are just, we don't disagree with the expense. We just don't know what it is. And so we've been inquiring more, not saying we don't agree with this, just can you tell me what this is? Such as, additional cleaning services when we have a full-time janitor, and what additional are they doing over than what our janitor does? Just some kind of, we've been just raising these questions because we just don't know. And we have looked at some of the larger dollar amounts going out, and we've looked at them and we've been questioning, like, is this industry standard? Is this normal? Why are we being some of them looks like we might there's like markups on subs in addition to overseeing those subs and being charged for twice, overseeing and the markup. So just things that we've been seeing that we don't have a full understanding of, and we will go ahead and have those invoices pulled so we can look at them at a committee and see is this. And of course, we are not making any decisions. We're only making recommendations.
Right
Yeah,
now, I
it-
Laurie,
gather information.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, in the end, we don't implement anything. We make recommendations to the board, and the board goes ahead and makes those decisions.
I think Mary was trying to weigh in.
Yeah. Mary?
A lot of times when you're doing construction, and we've done a lot, we've built restaurants, we've built buildings. When you use one contractor and then he subcontracts everything else out, you are actually paying a lot more for those trades than you should be. There's certain things that I think we can do ourselves without using P&W. One example that I'm going to bring up is the renos in the El Galvi kitchen. Like, we paid them $11,000 to hire a plumber and paint in there. Like, some things we can do ourselves. And I think when you just automatically give every project to somebody and then they go to sub trades, we're paying the consultant and then we're paying the trades. So I'd like to look at those projects.
And again, looking at them doesn't mean we're going to recommend a change. It just means we're going
Exactly, but
to understand them.
looking,
Basically, we want to look
Yeah.
at, 'em, we want to understand them, and then we want to make a recommendation based on our understanding.
yeah, definitely.
So Joanne, I'd guess that this must sound like an onerous situation.
I was thinking witch hunt.
No, we are not
no.
going to do any witch
That's,
hunt.
well,
It's
we
absolutely
do not subcontract through P&W. We have direct contracts with all those vendors. Every contract has been brought out to the board for approval, and they're all on record. So yeah, we can dig those all out and we can go through them. And I think it's a reasonable piece of oversight for you guys to take up. I'm just saying, like the information is already out there. It's not that like we have to put it together or do anything special. So I'm very confident that those arrangements in the area of construction are completely transparent and ready to go. So
Awesome.
awesome. Yeah, exactly. But don't one of the things that I think is important for this group to know is that in order to keep to the schedule for renewals of marina rentals, I'm going to have to bring to the board a recommendation around fees in January. Right? So if we opt not to add the $1,200 extra fee for wet slips, then we will lose 1 year of collecting that revenue, which will mean 20% of the money that needs to be collected for the replacement of the dock, the wet slips, in 2029 will not be collected. And that may be okay, but it's a big decision to defer that amount of money.
So this is why I want to talk about the net income at the end of the year and possibly discuss that so that we can look closer at the marina specifically before making a quick decision on what the best option is to do.
Yeah, well,
Because if we transferred 100,000, let's say, I'm just throwing this out there as an idea. If we transferred $100,000 of 2023 operating net income into the capital fund, 105,000, that would cover this year's fees, what was budgeted for this year's marina fees, and give us, the committee, the board, a little bit more time to deep dive into that and look at it a little bit more closely, comps, all of the stuff.
And there's more than just, whether a fee is going to be added, the amount of the fee that's going to be added. And is it all due in March, or is the additional might be due in June, just to give people with, property tax, marina fees already, who might not have budgeted for it. So there's a lot to look at. I just threw the word June out there. There's been no decision or anything made. But
that's
there's a lot to
interesting.
look at.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a lot to that fee in general.
Yeah.
Just, does it need to be in its own separate fund? We've never had a capital use fee. The closest thing was the transfer fee, which had its own set of whatever. So I think it really does need to be looked at closely and implemented and cut, cross all the T's, dot all the I's before we do it. So I really don't want to rush into that because we have not had a fee like that before.
Yeah, they're great points. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make it clear that the decision to defer the decision was in itself very impactful on the capital budget, and the results of that advisory question were very clear.
And I
They're
think,
very clear based on the information provided to the voters.
Yeah,
Let's also point out that it was an advisory vote, but so putting the numbers into the budget before they even had the results of an advisory vote make me raise my eyebrows. You don't put a dollar amount in on an advisory vote before you have the numbers when you submit your budget. Not that I would think it was done that way.
I think that'll be come up when we discussed the budgeting process on if you include something in the budgeting process and then you put it out for an advisory vote, what if it overwhelmingly went a different way that didn't support that amount being put in the budget, then you wanted to honor that? What do you do? How do you make up that deficit in the budget? So there's a lot we need to look at. And again, not saying that the number of 1,200 is right or wrong. We just really need to get the facts and see which direction we need to go, not want to go, but need to go.
also, in
I'd like to also mention that, you know, people that have boats at the marina have like 30-year-old sailboats. They've been there forever. And you know what? Maybe adding another $1,200 is gonna just put them right over the edge. Maybe nobody's gonna want to rent a spot in the marina when it's $3,000, because that is a pretty hefty fine. We need to take out the temperature of the people that are there, because we can raise the dues and then everybody leaves, and then where are you at? Like, oh, great, we've got tons of spots and maybe nobody wants them. We need to do a lot more digging and finding out information about this. We also need to, if the people are going to pay that extra money, we need to give them some assurance, because I've heard things about, oh, well, let's do a lottery for the wet slips. Well, if I've just paid $1,200 extra dollars, which is like $2,800 for the last 3 years, I'm definitely not going to be going ahead with a lottery that I lose my spot. So like there has to be insurance given to those wet slip owners if they're going to invest in the new marina, that they're going to get to keep their spot and it's not going to be come up to an auction. Like there is a lot of stuff put out there, and you know, I think we need to have a real good guideline of how this is going to work before we just raise people's dues.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
something we will discuss. And I think Stu has his hand up.
Yeah, couple comments. First, I'd like to remind all committee members that the committee members themselves are not really in a position to make requests of the general manager. That is the committee's chair's position, and she should make those requests to the general manager based on discussions with the committee. And the other thing with respect to the marina, the caveat with the advisory vote is we actually don't know how many boat owners or marina users actually were involved in that vote. So, you know, it's important to see what the community is thinking, but when less than a third of the community votes, and we don't know how many of those members that voted for a particular way in the advisory vote were actually boat owners, then that's concerning to me. I think really we need to go out to the marina users and pose the question directly to them, and go from there, in addition to the advisory vote, and then make an assessment of what should be done.
Thank you, Stu. And to support and back your comment, when anyone on this committee is talking to Joanne or Joel when they're here and they say, I'd like to request this, I'm jotting that down and I will take that as a request and I will run with it. So the requests won't be coming directly from the committee members. But when someone says they want to request it, we're just going to have an understanding that the protocol will be followed and the request will come.
Yeah, that'd be great. I just don't want Joanne to feel like there's some sort of witch hunt going on here, or Joel, and
Right.
You know, this is supposed to be a collaborative thing and we're all working together to achieve a common goal.
Yes, absolutely. We're gonna just cut down on the verbiage instead of instead of Karen saying, I'm going to request Lori to request this. She's just gonna say, I want to request, just to make it just easier. And we'll make sure we get all those requests in. Joel has been out ill and I have told him we may have some requests coming. I also told him that we will not make a request and expect results from him until he is back to full strength and has caught up on any work that he may have missed being out. So we won't be getting these document requests by Friday.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure how many people were planning to review them over the Christmas holiday anyway, to be fair.
We'll wrap it and put it under their tree.
That's right. I expect a present.
Finance committee book.
Warm yourself by the fire as you peruse the contract pending and current list.
I just wanted to make a couple comments. Thanks, Stu, for your suggestion that perhaps talking with the tenants and getting their feedback and their ideas is good. Also, the committee may have some suggestions on really, we're talking about some major fees, but some minor fees that might help. Like in terms of putting for example, putting a fee for going onto the waiting list. There's some rationale behind that. I don't know if you guys want to get into that tonight, but I think that might be helpful. So just some ideas to help. But again, we make recommendations. We don't make decisions as a board.
Well,
But yeah, and the other thing I want to get back to, just want to make sure everybody knows the NNE did request that Joanne start contract negotiation with Unilect for a couple of reasons. One being that they informed the committee that at the AGM their schedule for November is beginning to really fill up.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that we have them or somebody in place. And I echo that we should look for the following years. Are we getting the most value for our community? So I just want to be straight up with, because you guys were talking about reviewing contracts. We asked that happen.
well, it's almost like the time, like for Unilect specific, I mean, for an election, third party election, the time would be now to do it for
2025.
Yes, yeah. So I mean, maybe that's something that we as a committee want to talk about. But we need
Yeah.
to be way ahead for that.
And to touch on the getting marina owned boat slip owners involved. While the board does not currently manage the waiting list, we have reviewed it and we have noted notes that we will give back to the responsible party of duplicates. So we have some duplicate people on there I don't mean we have a wet and a dry slip waiting list, but we have duplicates on the wet slip. We have people that no longer own in Sudden Valley who are still on the slip. So in which case they would be paying the non-resident rate. We have people who are not owners, but are residents. So we need to define which rate are they paying. So we are working on it, but we are not taking responsibility. We are not contacting owners or anything. That would go back to the appropriate staff member.
One of the things, this may not be our purview, but I should point out, so it's on record, there could be on the waiting list, it doesn't indicate what boat. that
No,
person-
we
let
have
me-
some
let me just finish.
people.
So we have 3 types of slips.
Mhm.
A 20-foot bow rider would fit in any of those slips. My boat I'm on the waiting list, is not going to fit into any of,
Correct.
there are only a few that it would.
Yes.
So I think that waiting list needs to be broken out based on,
And it needs, yeah, so that is being worked on. That's not really a finance committee
I know,
responsibility to make, but
know.
but just to let it know, it's not just sitting there doing nothing. We have identified, so like some duplicates and some people who are on there with a first name only and no other information. So
Can I make a
What
comment
Rob
there,
brought
Lauren?
up before, what Rob brought up before about if you want to be on the waiting list, to put down $100, and that will be refundable to you once you get your slip or if you get off the list. But I think it would make people more serious about getting on the list if they had a little bit of
it would.
tie
If
to it.
they had some skin in the game, they would have a reason if they
Yes,
move out of Sudden Valley to take them, and they no longer wanted to slip, to take themselves off the list. And that would help
exactly.
whoever's managing the list keep up to date.
To understand it.
Because if they don't say they've moved out, how do we know to take them off the list?
Well, we are open to the
Well,
public.
exactly.
So anyone, they don't have to be a resident to get on that
Correct.
list, and
Some of
residents,
them have moved to New York.
yeah, and have
But
access.
is
better
there
tele-
not can we not make it a resident priority for the marina?
That would be a board discussion and not really something that would, unless they request the assistance of the finance committee to come up with
Yeah.
fees and how that's all working. I think that would
Yeah.
be a combination of the board and Sudden Valley staff.
Yeah.
I just, since many opinions have been shared about the marina, I'd like to play the devil's advocate here. I understand that the people who are most likely to be knowledgeable about marina operations are the people who actually use the marina. I completely understand and agree with that. I also know, though, that we're expecting the community to subsidize the marina through dues. It is not paid for entirely by the fees that are charged for the use of the marina. That is not the case. It is operated at a loss when you include capital and when you take into account the fact that there is something called overhead.
We should probably wait
So,
this committee until we have all the numbers before we get
Right.
into the discussion.
yeah, precisely. So since money from the overall community is used to maintain the marina, the overall community does have a say in how it should be operated, in my opinion. And all of those things need to be considered. The golf course, there's been a lot of discussions in looking at old board meetings, the golf course at certain points has been a real touch point, right, for controversy as well. Because to maintain a good golf course, you've got to make significant capital investment. And we do have a beautiful course and it does bring in a lot of revenue. So all good things. But the difference between the golf course and the marina is a really important one to note. And that is anyone who can borrow a set of clubs can play a round of golf. There isn't a steep price to entry and there's no waiting list. Although if you want to golf on the sunniest day of the summer, you might not get in right away. But in the marina, there's 88 people who get 87 actually, since one of the slips is reserved for the fire department's boat, right? So we've got 87 slips for people, and we have 7,000 some odd people who live here. Not that we're all odd, but about 7,000 people. And that's really different. That's an asset that's really different than some of our other assets. Now, you don't have to have a wet slip to enjoy the lake. And this year, when the launch dock is installed, it'll be a lot easier to launch boats, right? And many people don't even have to have a boat to enjoy the marina. It's a great destination for your dog. People go out and they walk on that spit. A lot of the costs that are attributed to the marina also support the park that's down there. It's not all about boats, right?
Mhm.
People like to be just water adjacent. But all of those things have to be taken into account, right? And it's not really just about the group of people who has their boats there. There's a much larger community impact. And so while the boat owners are the clear experts on how a marina should be operated and what services they expect and what they're willing to pay, the whole community does have skin in the game. And I feel that their opinions are worthwhile.
So pretty-
Absolutely.
So
Well take.
Can I make a
Absolutely.
comment
That
there?
was the one thing that I found interesting was when the entire $800,000, which was all the spit repairs, got all allocated to the wet slips. Because in truth, that's not really all the wet slips. It created a wonderful park for everyone. It protected the dock launch, which anybody can use. So that was one of my questions that I would like, that whole $800,000 was not just to protect 88 wet slips. It protected the whole park.
So this is, thanks, Mary. I agree. So this is what, without getting into this too much, this is kind of what I was talking about when I said I want to understand what is the problem we're solving for? So are we solving for just the wet slips? That's a different set of data than the whole marina, as in the marina business versus the whole marina area, which is the park and everything. And we tend to kind of put them all together and talk about them the same and different, all in the same conversation. I'm not meaning to pick on you, Joanne, but as you were talking about, you started with wet slips and ended with the total park. And I'm still not clear if you meant, and I don't need this answer today, but I'm still not clear if when you're talking about the marina doesn't make a profit, do you mean the wet slips don't, the marina business doesn't, or when we add in all of those things that are for everyone, for the park, for the picnic pavilions, the parking lot, that soft launch area, is that what we're talking about? And so as a request, as we get further down this, there was a great start with that 10-year view of profitability. I would really, and I've done some of it myself, but like to deep dive into that and actually name those projects and look into that a little bit deeper, and what is wet slip specific and what is marina business specific, meaning you have to pay some sort of a fee to get access to whatever that is, the launch dock or whatever, and what parts of that are actually everyone's.
The marina
soft
park.
flooring, the parking lot was in there, possibly the pavilion repairs were in there. So I would really like to understand that better. And if we want to talk about just the wet slips, and are the wet slips covering their costs, because you're right, only for one season, for one whole year, 87 households have access to that. Then look at that revenue and expense, which we don't have, because you have to actually make a lot of assumptions in getting there. So what amount of our operating expenses are attributed to the wet slips? What amount of the revenue is attributed to the wet slips? Because some of it's commingled, and to
Yeah.
what level of detail do we want to get even into that? It's a big thing when you really start to dive down into like, well, only these 87 people get to use it. And then when you start really trying to understand that data, it's a lot to dig into, especially when you look back 40 years that those things have been involved. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
It's a lot, and we need to
So-
get it done in a month.
Well, right. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, I was going to start with this, is what is the directive for, because we could talk about ideas and whatever. I think maybe all of us have had some experience with the marina at some point in time, but what is the directive from the board? What do they want us to answer? And what information do we need to go to start down that path?
We need to look at, again, well, I'm just gonna use two terms, the marina, which would include your wet slips, your dry slips, your launch dock,
Okay.
and the marina park, which is the pavilion, the dog park. We have the restrooms in there, which are hard to say. You really can't have a marina without the restrooms. You can't have a park without the restrooms. It's a multi-use. Do more slip owners use the restroom than park owners use the restroom? I have my opinion based on my use, but I don't know if that's correct.
Right.
So I think we need to look at those. And if you eliminated the marina, what expenses would be eliminated? What revenue would, because it's from some preliminary figures, looking back years, you could also say that our dues are all lowered every month because of the revenue the marina brings in, the wet slip owner and dry slip owners pay.
So what we
So
need,
need
Kind of separate them. Look at marina operations, and then if we do decide to impose an additional fee, is it for just through 2029 or is it forever? Is it going to be 1,200? Is it a different amount? Where's that money going? Is it going into a reserve account or is it going into general
Yeah.
operating? So we really need to kind of look at all of that.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, step one is the board wants us to really understand marina expenses and be able to differentiate them between this is marina business and this is just the marina area, the park and all of that, and be able to find some criteria to define that. Then, based on that, they want us to make a recommendation about a fee,
Yes.
a fee.
Yes. See what it is. I mean, maybe it's not going to be 1,200. Maybe it's going to be 1,000. Just throwing numbers out here
Right.
because we don't have clean data
Mhm.
to look at. Because yeah, we saw data averaged, you know, over 5-year period, a 5-year look back, 2 of which years included COVID.
Mhm.
1 year included a huge $800,000.
Yeah.
And that $800,000 needs to be
Yeah. To be
spread over
broken down.
useful life.
So can we start with that? Can we start with
Yeah.
that? spreadsheet
Absolutely.
That was presented, and let's just break it down
it-
and show the
Mhm.
projects. And
Absolutely.
I don't know, do we want to go back
Yeah.
further or?
And I would also like to look at the proposal for the new docks because we have very small vessels in our marina. And I don't see any boats out there that need to have water and electricity going to their spots. We don't have boats that have bilge pumps running and, you know, need water to do that and electricity to do that. So, I mean, that's all lovely, but we're not Bellingham Yacht Club. We don't need those things.
I think it's 80,000 or 85,000. It's a standalone item that can easily be taken out of the cost, the engineer's estimate. And, you know, again, it might be a good idea to send it in, you know, to distribute it again to this team. Lori will let me know what she wants to do, but the fact is all of that documentation has been made available publicly for months. So
One thing I'd like to point
Yeah.
out is believe, I believe the preliminary engineering design showed 20-foot slips. Boats are much, if you look at the average length of our boats, we should be looking at 22 or 24-foot slips. The other thing too is that we charge the same amount for any boat that goes into any of those slips. We don't charge for overhead. So
Right, we charge, but there's 3 different categories.
that's width. Most slips are based on width in between
Yeah.
each of the piers. So all of the lengths are the same. So that if you go down there in the summer, you'll see a lot of overhang, and you don't charge for that.
No, we don't.
So I think we need to really take another look at how
How we're
the-
charging.
how we're
fees.
charging.
Fee structure.
I have a question also. Maybe this is really a simplistic view, but we were talking earlier about subsidizing the 88 slips, and I know that everybody should have a say in it, but here's my question: if we were to pull the income, most of the income, excuse me, all of the income that is paid for in wet and dry, and use that exclusively for the maintenance or capital improvements that need to be done, would that pull away from, to put this nicely, so isn't our revenue helping keep our dues down, to be quite frank?
no. And the reason for that is called overhead, right? So if you want the grass mowed in the marina, if you want it plowed in the winter, if you want rec staff to administer the slips, if you want other services like accounting to charge people for the slips, that's all overhead, right? So you can't say just the specific costs that go to the docks are the only thing you're going to show as a cost against those fees, because most of the parking is people using boats, not all of it, but a lot of it is. And then the dry slips are a huge maintenance task for the team there. Many days, many hours are spent there. So the idea that you can isolate an asset from making some contribution to all of the operating departments that serve it. Here's another great example. In the summer, security spends at least half their time at the marina because that's where all the people are and that's where the traffic is. Right. So again, that I get that the park is part of that, but what part of security in the marina should be paid for by the people with the slips? And it's really
Joanne,
hard to tease that out. I'm not saying that we can't tease out the appropriately provide additional detail about that lump, the capital expenses over the last years. We can, but contribution to overhead is something that's going to be impossible to calculate.
Possible to calculate, but not impossible to get a rough estimate.
Well, this is a good,
Joanne, I live on the marina
Building.
and I
Exactly
see
what it is, but we
security
know-
there quite often. But it really has nothing to do with the wet slip people because those gates are locked. What it has to do with is kids doing wheelies in the parking lot, kids going out on the pier, lighting off firecrackers, having parties, just reckless kids out there. So I think you should examine all those calls because nobody can get into the wet slips. Like,
And that would
it's
be a good
parties going on there.
Well, I think that's why we need to have the conversation is because when we talk about overhead and we talk about
Yeah.
like having the grass mowed, okay, so what is our criteria for what is as an expense that should be covered by marina fees? And
Yeah.
we need,
But I'll tell you, we had to weed whack around our trailer for the last 2 years because there was no maintenance done in our dry spot. Zero.
we had one for a few years too.
Yeah.
what I was trying to say was, I think
So,
it's a really good conversation.
But we need to
Well,
have the data in front of us before we
Yeah,
can
yeah, we
continue.
need to fact
Yeah.
check.
Let Mitch, Mitch has his hand up.
We're never going to work this as a group this way. Actually, I would like to suggest that you charter a small subgroup to go assemble all this information and put together all the data so we don't spend our entire meetings doing ifs on every little item that we're discussing now.
Perfect. And I think we should do that with.
And to include some community that do not have a boat.
Yeah, that's good.
Mitch, could I get you to mute your phone or whatever you logged on? I'm getting a lot of feedback from it. I could hardly hear what anybody's saying.
Yeah,
I'm-
get in the mic.
We'll have
I'm
to
in
repeat
a
it.
mic.
Is that the mic? Because you're showing up separately on the screen here from Zoom.
Oh, can you hear me now, Stuart? Just you're still getting feedback on me?
I'm still getting feedback. But it happened as soon as you showed up as being logged in from Zoom.
All right, I'm not logged in. I'm at the meeting. So
Yeah, I know. I don't know why you're showing up as being logged in from Zoom.
okay, someone probably used my login. I would.
Oh, there we go. All right,
oh, you're
perfect.
gone.
You're gone. Much better. But you're still here, so that's great.
So
So what Mitch suggested is we do smaller committees within the finance committee and include community members who don't have a vote on the board of directors to kind of look at it. And we could do that with both golf and marina so that we don't have 7 people spinning their wheels. We could break it down into 3 or 4 people. Is that what you were saying, Mitch?
a smaller committee, small subgroup. Take a person here in this, someone that's got passion on the topic. Rob seems to have a tremendous amount of passion on this topic, and I would say that he's a subject matter expert on marinas. As good a person as we've got in this association. Have Rob assemble a small group of people, whatever he thinks, but include members of the community that don't have a boat, and say, let's put together the numbers. Where's the numbers? What's the cost? Blah, 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 blah. And have them bring a report to the finance committee so we can help the GM move along.
Well, okay, but I do feel like we need, we have to be judicious about this, but we need the numbers that staff agrees to, because otherwise we're providing numbers that are like, we don't agree with that. Like, we need to make sure we have the right ones. So
Okay.
when we're asking for numbers for financials, I really feel like they need to come from staff. At the same time, I do not want to add to just like, let's see this. What about this? What about that? You know
yeah,
what I
we
mean?
can't take up Joel's
But-
entire day.
But I do feel like personally, if we just start with that, it was presented at the budget town hall meeting and just break that down by project and then find some way to quantify. I don't know how to answer your overhead question, Joanne. I get where you're coming from,
Yeah.
but somehow we need to be, I mean, if it were just me, I would just, and this is talking too much, Mitch is probably mad. You know, I would say, does it go away if the marina business goes away? If it doesn't go away, this is a cost that the whole community should pay for out of dues. That is what my default answer would be. I'm open to hearing other perspectives. But I do think we need to be able to put some criteria around it where everybody kind of agrees like, okay, this is a marina business expense. This is just a marina park expense. And we're able to differentiate between, okay, this really needs to be covered by the fee. Well, and that's a question actually based on
Eric, can I
our
ask a question? Just to make
governing documents, but versus the whole community, this is something the whole community benefits from. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm tracking with you. So are you saying that, are you saying that we should look at data that if the marina ceased to operate, would that expense go away with it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
would truly be tied to the operation of
Of the
the
marina.
marina itself.
Yeah, so we have the marina P&L and we all look at it and we all see a big profit of like $170,000 and we see that, hey, that subsidizes dues by $6,000 or $6 a month. And what Joanne is saying, and it's a fair point, there are other costs. There are some that I think could be put in there personally. But there are others like accounting, that there's some amount of accounting time that is spent sending the bills, receiving the payments, whatever. How do you apportion that? The grass, that to me would be one I'm like, everybody's still going to use it. You know, I mean, but it's something to consider because accounting's not going away if the marina goes away, but it is freeing up time. You know, that is time that is specific to billing for the marina. It's not something that everybody is benefiting.
Well, my concern, not necessarily that Sun Valley has done this, but I have seen municipalities that owned, marinas where they pulled money, they pulled income from the tenants and used it for other things within their municipality. And then when something occurred to their marina where a seawall, that they were going to have to find a way to come up with a lot of money to repair that seawall or they would have lost their park.
Yeah.
And so my concern is are we prepared for something like that?
Well, that is what has happened for the last 40 years.
Thank you.
It's nobody's fault. To be perfectly honest, if I read our governing documents, I see capital expenses as something that everybody pays for. And so that to me has been the thought going all along, is that we charge a fee for the marina because it does have these barriers to entry for people to be able to use it when there's a profit. Same with golf. It goes in, it reduces the governing documents. That's kind of how I read it's supposed to work. And there was just this understanding that there was this give and take and give and take. Now there's kind of this different view, and the advisory vote has been put out that there's this idea, and I get it from the perspective of the wet slips because those are very limited, that those really should cover their fees. And so now that's why we're looking at it in a little bit different way than I think has been looked at before. I don't think anyone was at fault before for doing it the way they did before, but now we have this big expense coming up. And let's be honest, it's not just the wet slips that aren't funded. Every single thing in our reserve study is only 20% funded. it's not like it's the one thing that's causing a shortfall. Everything is there.
Well, and I'm not trying to,
Hold on, I'm gonna follow it up. You're right about the
Okay,
fundamental
Mitch,
issue.
get closer.
You're right about the fundamental issue on the governing documents. By title, every person in the association owns a 3,125th of the entire association. And the capital was supposed to be spread over 1 divided by 325. Everyone owns a piece of it, right? We just spent a couple $100,000 on Gate 5's park. Well, there's no revenue on that park, but it's an asset that we maintained. And for that reason, everyone pays into the capital to maintain a park that they'll never use. That's the same for our roads. That's the same for the dance barn. It's the same for the welcome center. It's the same for all of them. It's the capital.
The governing documents also give the Board of Directors the right and responsibility to assess appropriate use fees.
That has nothing to do with this.
Kind of does. It's a use fee.
I don't know that the capital one is. I think that's something that needs to look at a little bit more, but that's really a board thing to do. I would need to look more at what the verbiage is around use fee. But again, I kind of talked about it, touch on it before. Having a separate capital fee is different than we've ever done before. I think that needs a little closer look, but that's not a finance committee thing to look at. That's the board to look at. Is it appropriate to charge a specific capital fee for users of a particular thing? Do our governing documents allow for that? And I don't know. That's a board thing to look at. But I feel like we have discussed this all around and we can come up with ideas all day long. I do want to make sure we have an idea of what data we want and the specific question that we're trying to answer, because this sounds time sensitive and I don't want to just, we're all spinning our wheels about our ideas and what about this, but stick to the goal of, this sounds like this was a board request. Happy to dive into it, but I don't want to spend a lot of time answering a question that they didn't ask us to answer.
Yeah, no, I think and I will clarify with exactly what form they want the final,
Deliverable.
what do they want
Yes.
us to say? They want this? What
Yeah.
line items are they going to want us to consolidate to? And when it comes to shared expenses, I think starting with just eliminating anything that if the marina went away, would this still be a charge? And is the marina using it? So it's like mowing the lawn at the dog park. That would still be there. That is it. But then again, you have to look at fees collected by the pavilion. Okay, that's not a marina. So you have the marina and you have the marina park.
Mhm.
So like the tennis courts are now pickleball courts.
They're both.
Yeah.
And basketball.
So we can separate that.
Well,
and
they're
then
actually
shared
different plats of
expenses.
land.
And we have to, at some point, we're going to have to take these shared expenses, like such as the bathroom, the restrooms, and you're going to have to make your best educated based on the information you have decision on what is the split for the purposes of, looking at profitability and upcoming expenses. And so, because if the marina went away, the restrooms would stay.
Yeah.
But the more people using the marina, the more wear and tear on the restrooms. So at some point we're going to have to make an educated decision based on some assumptions. And you can assume.
But Lori, the people using the marina are not just the people that have wet slips.
Yeah.
There is a ton of people day launching and paying like the $20 to go in and launch their boats. So like they're using the washrooms, they're using the parking lot. So they're not wet slip owners. That's actually a big revenue source for the association. and maintaining the parking lot and all of that stuff goes to that revenue too. And we're putting in a new dock launch next year, so it'll be easier for the day guys to launch their boats. The people that have wet slips don't use the dock. They put their boat in there in May and they pull it out in September.
Well, so again, that's to clarify the question even more. Is it
Yeah.
marina or is it the wet slips? Those are different expenses.
Two different things.
And revenue
Yes,
associated with the wet slips versus the marina in general. They're used.
exactly.
Yeah, you're right. Like
The
used twice. by
wet slip people don't use that launch. They will use it twice. They'll use it when they put their boat in and they'll use it when they pull their boat out. What that dock launch does is enable Sudden Valley to have this big revenue stream of people launching their boats every day. And the dry slip people pulling their boats over, launching it, and they're all paying.
Right. So,
Except by, I mean, it doesn't exactly work that way. The other thing I'd like to point out is the math on this. The $1,200 fee that was proposed over the course of the 5 years between 2024 and 2029 generates 1/3 of the money needed to replace the wet slips. So the community is still kicking in 2/3
Mhm.
from, general capital funds. So, and if you extend the math out another 30 years, which is potentially the lifespan of the new dock, even collecting that 1,200 additional fee every single year would, when you account for inflation and the cost of the dock, would not pay for its replacement again in 2059. And I'm certain I won't be alive to see that. So it's not my problem. But
But if
from a
you-
math place, this is complicated. And I think some of the suggestions have been super helpful in terms of, Karen, your suggestion to think about, well, if the marina went away, would we still have the expense? And then what share of that expense is sort of increased or borne by the partial use of the marina folks? And so we can look at that. We can look at the capital expenses. We can compare that to the revenues collected over time. But don't get so hung up about the past that you forget the future, because that's another important comparator for evaluating the investment, right?
Well,
So.
And this is another thing I
So
would
Joanne, if you think the wet slip owners are gonna invest $1,200 extra dollars a year, which could be good, then when they move in 3 years, can they sell that spot to somebody else or something? Because they've actually paid a capital expense for a dock that they're never going to use.
that is definitely something that a recommendation surrounding that would be a recommendation that could come from a combination of the finance committee and the board of directors.
well,
Yeah,
and
because if you just like dump $4,000 into a dock that's going to be built maybe 5 years from now or 6 years from now, hopefully, it's going to stretch out longer, and you've paid for that dock, and then you have to move, you have to leave Sudden Valley, and you've left all that equity in the new dock behind.
Yeah, so Mary,
Is there a
personally-
way that owner could get
I
it back?
No, you're raising great points. I didn't personally support that kind of fee. My suggestion was to auction them off, because that would determine their value to the community, wouldn't it? Precisely.
you mean sell them?
That was
No,
my-
but then it's like, who's got the more money? And I don't think we do that in Sudden Valley. I think we make everything affordable for everybody. We don't say who's got the most money, you can have a spot.
Yeah, well, that was my
I don't
suggestion,
think
because it would
that would
determine
be
the
good.
market price pretty darn quick. And I wasn't suggesting we would sell it in perpetuity. I was suggesting we would sell the lease, 1-year lease. Anyhow, obviously not many
Yeah.
people agreed with me, but
So regarding the math, I would like to look at it forward looking, like you say, the $1,200, but also include in that the operating portion of the fee. So there's two fees now. There would be an operating fee
And capital.
and a
And
capital
then that's
fee.
why I had some concerns about the implementation of that as a separate item.
Yes.
So anyhow,
So there's a lot to
Yeah.
look at. But I fully agree with you with there's the past, yes, and that gives us a little bit of a baseline, but really we need to look at it going forward. And one thing that the reserve study does have in it is there's a column in there that is the required annual contribution in order to fund the next iteration of replacement of the thing. It is not going to make up for past not contributing
In
towards
the past, yeah, it's.
towards that. It's not going to make up for it, but it gives you a pretty good indicator of based on the cost that's in there, which right now we have an engineer's estimate, which is much more than what we had before, but it's not a final project cost, you know.
Correct.
But it will divvy that out over the, you know, expected useful life and give you, and it's, you know, from a capital side, this is surprisingly easier than operating than divvying out the cost because you can see what is, but the reserve study is very helpful in looking in forward looking, how much you would need to contribute in order if you were contributing each year.
And we have to do, you know, we have to look at, make sure we keep everything within the 7%. And of course, nobody wants to raise dues, but nobody wants to see our amenities deteriorate either. We've all,
Well, and
No,
I
I don't. And that's why, you know, a couple of years ago when we had that special assessment to keep our park and pools, and it was $11 a month. And you know what? That was the best thing that ever happened to Sudden Valley, that the community voted, no, we need to keep our pools, we need to keep our parks, and we need to fund this. Now we have more money. Back in that day, I think our dues were $80 a month. We couldn't afford anything, and we would have had to close those pools down and just let everything go to ruin. But we do have the money now, and I think we have to spend it wisely. And we have to keep up our amenities, and we have to fix things that are broken. And that's why we love Sudden Valley.
I am. We are going to, you know, Stu's also on the board of directors and ENRA co-chair, and we will bring it up to the board and find out, or the executive committee, and find out exactly what deliverables do they want and in what form. Do they want to, do they want it just, this is my recommendation, we'll get that resolved, and then we'll start moving on. I do like Mitch's suggestion to divide and conquer. So if we can do that, we could, you know, whoever has a passion, we do have two main things. We have golf. I think Stu is a great resource for golf, and Marina, Rob is a great resource because he really understands marinas. He was the voluntary dock master for a few years, so we have that there. And I will say I'm listening to everything you guys say. That's why I'm trying my hardest not to form a response while you are talking, because then I miss what you're saying. So if I pause or I don't have an immediate reaction, that is what I'm doing here, is I'm actually giving my full attention, listening to what you have to say. So we'll do that, and getting the GL out, I think, is going to help. We can start doing it. I'll send an email out to everyone. It's not going to have any confidential information. If any community member wants to see the email, then they're more than welcome to email me at my BOD address, and I will forward them a copy of the email I send to the finance committee. Because I do think the finance committee is one committee that needs ultimate transparency to our members. So whether or not they're here or they just want to follow up on the minutes, our minutes might be a little bit more. It might be minutes and meeting notes, but make sure that the community has a chance to give their input, and of course, public comments here on our meeting nights. And said there's not going to be any confidential information discussed here. So everything, all of our correspondence, when we decide who's doing what, if they want to know before a meeting, just ask, and we'll get that there. just really want, and if anyone has any ideas, I welcome anyone to come to our meeting and shoot out ideas. We might not be able to give you an answer or make a decision on your comment right then and there, but it is definitely something we will listen to and give fair consideration to. Okay, so I think we are good. Do I
Can
have?
I, can I make a quick comment, Lori? For all projects, you know, the important things to remember are one, the big picture, and then the other is the scope of what the board of directors, the scope of the information the board of directors are tasking us with reviewing or looking at. So we have to be careful not to go down the old rabbit holes because that just eats up a lot of time. But yeah, those are just two things that we should look at, and I look forward to working with everybody.
Looking forward to working with everyone as I look forward to working with you, Stu, and Rob on the board of directors. And do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to
Okay, meeting is adjourned at
8:13.
8:13. Could I get from you 3 here that I've been giving you the